Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, depending on where you're coming in from. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm joined with my co-host Alexa, and we're going to talk today about how principals can support student well-being during COVID. But before we get started, I would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know your name, your role, and what your favorite thing about spring is. We were just discussing on the phone before if the groundhog saw his shadow, which I believe he did. So we're 2 weeks away from spring, which is very exciting. So can't wait to hear what you all are looking forward to. Alexa, what's your favorite thing about spring?
I love walking. So I love to be able to walk, and when I start to see the flowers bloom and the leaves come back, I just feel like I'm so much more willing to slow down versus like when it's cold and you're just rushing through trying to get to your destination. Spring and summer slow me down a bit.
Yes, me too. I'm a cyclist myself, so right now my bike is in my house, set up on a bike trainer, and it's definitely not as fun as cycling outside. So I'm really looking forward to some spring cycling, even though I know it's going to be a little bit cold. Awesome. We've got a couple people writing us in today. They're excited to feel the sun. Yes, agreed. We've got some gardeners. We're looking forward to planting and pulling weeds. Love that one. And flowers, definitely. We do a farm share with a local farm close to us, and the winter vegetables are definitely not as exciting as the spring and summer ones, so I'm looking forward to some greens as well. Awesome. We've got folks coming in from Texas, from New Jersey. Welcome. From Minnesota. Wonderful. Awesome. And for those who are just joining us, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're coming in from, your role, and what you're looking forward to about spring. And we'll get started in a couple minutes. Actually, we'll get started sooner than that. We'll get started in 30 seconds, but looking forward to hearing. Julie, you are muted, but feel free to write us in the chat, please. Awesome. Lots of people looking forward to spending time outside. Not surprising. We've all been cooped up for a long time. Awesome. Hockey playoffs, yes. My sister has a place in Arizona, and she said she's looking forward to spring training with, I guess it's a baseball thing. All right. So we're going to get started. Today, we're going to be talking about how principals can, and assistant principals, really administrators, can support student well-being during COVID. I'm joined on the line here with Alexa Sorden, who's the founding principal of Concourse Village Elementary School in the Bronx, New York. Alexa, did you want to give us a little background on yourself?
So I am the founding principal of Concourse Village Elementary. I founded it in 2013. I just completed my 21st year with the New York City Department of Education. Prior to being a founding principal, I was actually a principal of a closing school in District 4. And prior to that, I was a director of academic achievement with a network when we had networks in DOE, and I was part of CFN 606. Then I have my experience as a literacy coach and a classroom teacher in grades K1, 2, and 4. I'm a mother of 3.
Wow.
and yes, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and Alexa is currently completing her PhD too, because you told me that that wasn't enough.
Yeah, at St. John's University in educational leadership.
Thank you. And I'm Lauren. I'm the marketing lead at the Unruly Spots team. But really, we're here to hear from Alexa. So our first question is really kind of giving us a little bit of background about your school, Alexa, and your scholars.
So Concourse Village Elementary School, as I stated, opened in 2013. We entered a campus that had previously closed 2 schools. So we were a school that was phasing in. We were the 3rd school that was coming on into the campus in 2013. We started with pre-K to 2, and then we grew our school to 5th grade. We're currently serving 3K to 5. We have 3-year-olds to 5th graders. And like I said, we're an elementary school located in the South Bronx, District 7, part of New York City Department of Education. We are currently implementing a hybrid model, which includes students in person and remote. So we have 40% of our scholars in person attending school 5 days a week, and 60% of our scholars are full-time remote. Our school size consists of 356 students. We have 86% students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. At our school, we offer art, music, physical education, and coding for both remote and in-person students. And we have a very strong focus on community.
Thanks, Alexa. And so you mentioned that your students are hybrid right now. And so my first question is really, how do you assess and prioritize all of your students' needs?
So we have different ways. So one of our, in terms of prioritizing, we will find ways to communicate. So an example of it is we would find ways to communicate with caregivers in an ongoing manner. So we have an app where we're able to text families, teachers that are communicating with when they're providing live instruction. Every child receives live instruction 5 days a week. So if they're remote, we're able to provide live instruction, and then we also allot time for parents to communicate with the teachers at that time. We also ask parents to complete a survey where we're gathering information in relation to access to food, technology, Wi-Fi, just their overall wellness. We're checking to see if anyone in the family has tested positive for COVID. Whenever we send surveys, we intentionally ensure that we keep it simple, no more than 5 questions. We make it accessible as well by sending it via text message so that the parent only has to access a link. And we utilize that data to streamline whatever support is needed. And then our parent coordinator, a guidance counselor, and our AP and myself, we break up into teams and see how we are best suited to provide support based on what the survey tells us. Our parent coordinator often goes actually to the homes to fix any devices or show families how to utilize the app. So if they are not able to make it into the school building, he physically goes into their home and provides support.
Thank
On
you.
the form, we ask
Oh, I was just going to ask you, so you have a full-time person who's dedicated to working with caregivers, is that right?
That's correct. And that's our parent coordinator.
And that must be really helpful. So is that a new role within your school, and how how helpful has that been for prioritizing needs of your students?
It's been extremely helpful. So the parent coordinator role has always existed in the Department of Education, but for a long time we had a vacancy, and that job fell primarily on myself and my guidance counselor. But now having a parent coordinator who is completely dedicated to parental support has really elevated the communication and the coherence with families, because that's just his sole purpose. He's constantly making phone calls, home visits, gathering resources, and also making contact with outside partnerships so that he could be able to provide additional support for families that anything that they're saying that is a need for them. So if it's mental health, or if it's additional tutoring, or if they just need food, or if they need clothing, whatever it is, he'll find different partnerships and then coordinate and ensure that the families receive what they need.
That's so important. So let's take a look at some of the questions that are on the survey that you send out every week.
So as I said, I really like to keep it simple. I know that in this, everyone can relate to filling out more surveys than ever during this time. And surveys are a quick way for organizations to get information. And I didn't want this to become a daunting task for families, so I kept it as simple as possible so that it could be accessible to all. So I'm asking, like, how are you doing? And then there would be a drop-down option. How is your child doing? One of them would obviously ask them for the child's name so that I would know who I'm referring to. Then it's how can we help, because we wanted to customize the support. I didn't want to enter with any assumptions of what anyone would need. I wanted to hear right from them, like, what exactly do you need so that we could be of use to you. And then we do ask if they need any mental health services. That became something that mattered a lot because many families were impacted by COVID in many different ways. Some children were with someone who was sick in the household. Some children experienced loss. Some children did not have closure when they experienced loss. So that's been one that has come up often. And then we'll ask if they're interested in additional tutoring support outside of the school community, because we had different organizations reach out to us stating that they could provide free tutoring services to families. So we were able to complete the process for them so that they could get access to additional academic support outside of our school community.
That's wonderful. We had actually a question about the parent coordinator position. They just asked about the assigned caseload. So are they responsible for looking after all of the students, or is there sort of a certain percentage?
So they are responsible for the entire school community, but we do work as a team. So we break it up in terms as a team. He's definitely more of the point person for the outside partnerships, connecting with outside partnerships and investigating what resources exist for our families. We tend to lean more on the academic and the social-emotional support because we have our guidance counselor as well that supports with the process. But he is the one that does the home visits. And although we have 356 families, the need doesn't exist for that many families. I would probably say it's about 10%. So it does become, it is manageable for him at this time, but he's solely responsible.
Great, thanks for clarifying, Alexa. And it sounds like the weekly school wellness forum is really important because that's what's going to give your family coordinator the information that he or she needs to get a sense for who needs the most help.
Yes, and that's why it's so important to keep it simple so that they're able to get through it quickly as well, so it doesn't become a long, daunting task for them.
Yeah. And so with that survey and, over the last year, what are the biggest student needs during COVID that you are seeing from your community, your school?
So we came up with 4 main needs that, based on what we've analyzed, based on the conversations we're having with families and with scholars, are pressing. And 1 was managing stress and anxiety. 2 was increasing physical activity and enhancing well-being. 3, maintaining student engagement. And 4, supporting the home environment and flexible scheduling.
All right, so before we dive in, I'm going to ask the same question to our audience today. What are your students' biggest needs? Are they the same? Are they different? Write us in the chat and let us know, what are your students' biggest needs right now? And we did have a question from Erin. What application do you utilize for your weekly school wellness forms?
We actually just, when creating the form, we use a Google form. So when you go on Google, when you create the form, you're then able to create a link, and then I'll click shorten the link. I copy and paste the link, and we have a text messaging service called Kenvolve that also tracks our attendance, and I'm able to send the parents the text message. And what I love about it, the Google form, is that then I'm able to export that into an Excel sheet and easily filter the information so that we could provide quick, targeted support.
Yeah, and I do want to call out that it is a text service, which I thought was important, since some parents, some caregivers won't have necessarily great access to internet. So anything you can do to make that more accessible or easy for them, I love that it was text-based. And then we had one more question, options in the drop-down for how they are doing. You mentioned that I think that it was a drop-down.
Yes. So it'll, like, you know, I'm doing great. I'm okay. I'm not, you know, I'm not okay. I need help, or I'm in need of a lot of support. I'm in need of an immediate call. So sometimes it's like, you know, it depends on the day. So like I'm not feeling it today, but I'm okay. I don't need any additional support. I know it's just a rough day. So we're able just to gauge where are they in terms of how they're doing. And then there is another section where we would ask about their child's health, like did anyone test positive? So it's like yes, no, or also does anyone you live with or anyone in the family? Because what also has come up that maybe it's not someone in the household, but then they know of a grandparent or an aunt and uncle that did test positive, and that's then concerning the child.
Yes. And pretty much a resounding agreement in the chat here. Everybody is agreeing about the emotional support, the social-emotional learning, and the engagement piece as well. So engagement, motivation, supporting students emotionally across the board. All right, so let's dive into the first one, which is managing stress and anxiety.
So when we thought about what does this look like, we first knew that we needed to meet the basic needs. So do they have laptops? Do they have iPads? Do they have access to Wi-Fi? We were fortunate that the Department of Education provided Wi-Fi, the hotspots embedded into the device. And all of our children have access at this time to Wi-Fi. And food and shelter. We wanted to make sure that if there were any food insecurities, how could we be of support to them? How could we utilize our cafeteria services to ensure that students had breakfast and lunch? And if they had a stable shelter. Then once we gathered that information and we knew that we were able to ensure that our students had what they needed in that area, then one of the things that we embedded was BIG. And BIG is an acronym that I came up with for breathe in deeply 3 times, set an intention for the day, and get ready to have a great day. And we do BIG with every transition. It was important for our educators and our students to stop and just breathe and just take a moment to just embrace the present. Because what we found is that we were just moving from one activity to the next. And we wanted teachers and students to be present so that they can take in the learning, but also just pause for a second. We just have to pause. So by engaging in BIG, they both win, our scholars and our teachers. And parents who are experiencing this in remote are saying that they're noticing the big difference in their child's self-regulation. I had one kindergarten parent say that her son told her, I just need to breathe right now. And he stopped and he just took 3 deep breaths and he was able to self-regulate. So what we want is for that to be just second nature to them. Flexible scheduling and assignment deadlines became really important. So in order to constitute your attendance for the day, students do have until 11:59 that day, because parents' work schedules vary. And sometimes, especially in the lower grades, they do rely on parental support. So if a parent is working all day, we wanted to create enough time where if they need to sit with their child at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., they have that time allocated, so it's not just during the school day that the child has to complete the work. We also looked at flexible scheduling, and what that meant was that the students that were listed for remote instruction, we needed to know where they were throughout the week. Sometimes they may not be in their household every day because parents need help with childcare. So they may be at grandma's house or at an aunt and uncle's house, and they don't have the same learning setup that they would at home. Or if they're at grandma's house, they probably get to go to bed a little later. So what we were noticing is that they weren't always making it to their first period class. So instead of looking at it as a punitive measure, we just said the students that we have noticed a pattern with, and then when we spoke with families, they shared that an 8:45 class was not the best for Johnny. So therefore we said, okay, it makes sense to put him in the 10 a.m. class. So we wanted to we wanted to show empathy when we were thinking about scheduling, which leads me to empathy first. So with students or parents that are testing positive or their extended relatives, we wanted to make sure that they knew that their health was of top priority and that there were different ways for them to show participation. If they couldn't make it to the live and they read a book or they completed an assignment paper pencil and they took a picture of it and texted to us via our text messaging system, that would account for credit for the work. Because parents that were sick and children that were sick, they were really worried about their work and they wanted to get their work in. But some of them physically could not stand up or even be able to think. And we're like, this is not fair for us to stress them when they're trying to recover or when mom is taking care of a sick grandma. This is not a priority right now. School is obviously important, but we need to exercise empathy and find other ways for our students to communicate with us and show that they are working. And the wellness calls, that's also very important. We send text messages, but there's nothing like getting a phone call to just say hi. So we break up into teams again, and there's about a team of 6 of us where we're just calling to say, hello, how are you? And a lot of the information does come from the survey when families are saying they're not well or that there's someone sick. So then we conduct outreach and make phone calls on them to check on them, just as, again, another extension of love and just saying, hello, how are you? We're just checking on you. Wanted to let you know we were thinking about you and that we're here if you need us. We've also delivered hard copies to the home. So we personally showed up at their doorstep to deliver hard copies of materials, and they can take a photo of it and text it, or we've mailed resources if the child is staying with another family member that's not located throughout the district.
I love the stress on empathy first and flexibility because we talked about before, Alexa, every student situation is different. And so, especially with some students might not feel comfortable sharing their camera because they've got, their parents behind them or other things happening. So being flexible was something that I heard a lot from our conversations that I wanted to call out as sort of an overarching theme.
That was definitely important, especially with the camera, which is sometimes a hot topic, like they're not showing themselves on camera. We do ask them for a quick peek, like, hey, I just want to know that that's you. Just, I see you, and then you can turn it back off. Children have, they've sent private messages saying, like, I don't like the way my hair looks today. Or, I just can't show myself today, or I have to stay on mute because it's really noisy. And it's like, it's a no judgment zone. Like, we're working with you because we just care about you as an individual, and the fact that you're here on the call today just makes us happy.
Absolutely. And another big one that you mentioned was physical health and well-being. Walk us through what that means.
So physical health is obviously important, and it supports the idea of this well-being. And I believe there's 69 counties in New York State, and they rate them on health. And the Bronx is 69. Out of the 69 counties, we're 69. So that means that we definitely have to get healthy, and we have to push that initiative to make sure that we're eating well. So one of the things that our PE teacher came up with was Wellness Wednesdays. And one Wednesday a month, he hosts a live session on cooking, and it's usually a healthy dessert, and it's for families and scholars together. So it's really nice to see the scholars and their families in the kitchen making healthy snacks, and they're just so surprised by what they come up with. One of the recipes was banana oats and chocolate chips, and that's how you make a cookie, and you bake it for 15 minutes. And I was surprised that it was so good. And the kids are like, wow, we're finding different ways to get, our sweet fix. Then we also encourage physical movement. Now more than ever, folks are not going out like they used to. And if you're remote, you're probably sitting often, sometimes laying, and we wanted to encourage movement. So our school intentionally participated in a fall fitness challenge. We were using our splats. In the photo, you could see one of our scholars using our scholars using the splats. And we were able to do that on remote and in person. So our physical education teacher consistently finds ways to increase physical movement in person and remote. And we all know that when you're more active, you start to feel better, and that therefore supports your well-being.
I love that there was that focus on making it accessible for both virtual and in-person students, because I know a lot of the PE teachers that we are working with, they are fully remote or mostly remote, and so it can be a challenge. So these are some great ideas. And now we've had a couple questions come in about accountability, so I want to come back to that in just a second after we talk about maintaining student engagement, because I think, Alexa, you have a lot of really great tips. So let's dive into that.
So, you want to keep the scholars coming back every day. We currently have 95% attendance. We're definitely working on that 5%, but our attendance week from the first day of school to this present moment has been 95%. And we gamify student participation, so we always want to make learning more playful and fun. So we'll play a time to climb, which is a game on Nearpod. The teachers will play Among Us with students. So based on all the work that was submitted, and that's a collaborative effort, so then you have to have your buddy make sure that he's accountable for you to make sure you did your work, because then if the class completed all their work, then the teacher will play Among Us online with them. We also have Class Dojo, which is a virtual reward system, because in person we have a reward system where we have a store, a school store, where students use their iPower dollars to shop. So then we wanted to replicate that for our remote scholars, so we use Class Dojo. Then we also use Kahoot, which is similar to, not as similar to a time to climb, because a time to climb is something you would see on Nearpod, and it's visual, and they're climbing like a mountain. So the top 3 scholars that get to the top of the mountain are like celebrated. So we noticed that by gamifying certain activities where they made sense, students were more inclined to participate. We give students choices in how they showcase their work. They make videos. They make audio recordings if they don't want to show their faces. They don't have to. They'll make a flip grid. TikTok is really popular, as we know. Some of our teachers use TikTok, and some of our students use TikTok to submit work, to show what they know. And any other digital medium. So, for example, they may choose to write their work out and take a photo of it, then they can send it to their teacher or upload it. Student competitions. So we're constantly tapping into their competitive spirits and saying, like, whoever does this first will get extra time or will get lunch with the teacher. If I could get the first 10 scholars to complete this, then I'll play Among Us. Or you'll get to omit one homework assignment. Breaking the day into smaller pieces. So we don't have long sessions with our scholars. We also made decisions about what was priorities in terms of our curriculum and what made the most sense. And based on that, we created smaller chunks of time throughout the day. So there's 20 to 30 minutes where they're receiving instruction from a teacher, and that will vary day to day. And what I mean by vary is we use Zoom. So the teacher will know, based on what the students completed the prior day, who needs a review or who needs a direct instruction lesson, or what students need. And based on the feedback she gets from based on the data, she's then able to put them into groups. So some students may go into breakout rooms, and then they're working with a partner, or they're having a conversation with a partner based on the coursework that's already been posted for them on Schoology, while she's then doing a direct instruction lesson with students that needed it based on the previous day's data. So we're using our time wisely, so that they're not bored and that they see it as a meaningful time with their educator. So they get 20 to 30 minutes of direct contact with every content area. Teachers, so they don't feel like they're sitting in a room just being talked at for 3 hours. And because we're
like that's
departmentalized,
even for adults.
Oh, major. And just in grades 2 through 5, they're departmentalized, so they're not even interacting with the same teacher, which works to break up the monotony for some in some cases. So they get to go into the next class with the next teacher, and they start off dancing. And every class starts dancing. Like, we start dancing, we always want to get them up out of their seats and get them really hyped for instruction. And then we transition to big, and we settle them down and they breathe, and then the teacher gets right into her instruction. But they don't stay in whole group the entire time. They break out into their breakout rooms, and the teacher monitors that while she's providing direct support as needed.
And I just wanted to call out to the TikTok, because I think that's so creative, and you must get some really fun, it's probably fun for the teachers as well to look at the submissions through different mediums. Do you have any examples of students or teachers using TikTok? You mentioned one teacher was just starting to use it, so I'm curious.
So our math teacher, she is embedding like real world learning examples. So one of the things that came up in her 4th grade lesson, it was multiplying, and it was a multiple. I'm really good at 3rd grade math. I just want to say that. Up to 3rd grade math, I rocked. So the 4th grade teacher, she was working on multiplication, and she wanted them to see some of the healthy choices that they were making. So she went into a store and made a TikTok where she's looking at the different nutritional facts on the different boxes and different drink options. And then she wanted to have them multiply the servings, because one of the things that we wanted to make them aware of was what they're putting into their body, but using a real-world example and then taking like the actual numbers in that Gatorade bottle or that Mountain Dew bottle and saying like, so how many servings of this are you actually taking, and not only the calorie intake, but what's the sugar intake, and then how does that connect back to what they're learning in science, and how does that connect with math? And then physical education, and how are you moving, and how are we making more health-conscious choices. So that was one of her activities. And the cool thing about it is that what I'm noticing with this particular teacher, she's becoming more focused on the learning intention, because the videos have to be a minute. So she really has to get to the point. And one of the things that she has reflected on, she's like, having to make these 1 minute or less videos has really forced me to get to the point. And I'm realizing that sometimes we talk more than we should. And if we all kind of subscribe to this idea of how can I get to the point of this lesson in 1 minute or less, the children would probably be more inclined to listen and would probably get the point of the lesson.
Absolutely. I think all of our attention spans are probably decreased by a lot over the years. So I love that it's helped her focus on getting to the point and focusing on the outcomes. We did have a question come in that I wanted to ask. Somebody asked, how do we encourage a student that's maybe already at risk of giving up or feeling discouraged because of the stress? Any tips for kind of motivating a student who's maybe feeling down?
It's a great question, and one thing that we have noticed is that students that receive support with the guidance counselor, they don't share as candid as they used to when they were in person, because now they're home. Those that are remote and that were benefiting from one-to-one counseling, they are not that open to share because they're home. And I'm pretty sure, when they had their private sessions or their small group sessions in the school, I guess it felt more intimate and more private for them. So one of the things that our guidance counselor has embedded was digital journaling and with the audio. So she gave them the option. She's like, we're going to create a digital journal. In this journal, you can sketch, you can write, or you can provide an audio. At whatever time, whenever you find an alone time, maybe you go into your bathroom and you just express yourself and will be able to communicate in this fashion, because she noticed that when she was having her sessions, those that would normally be really open to sharing were more reserved. So then she came up with the idea of a digital journal where they could share how they're feeling and mark their progress. So they do communicate with scholars on Schoology, where there's also a messaging system for students, so the teacher is able to check in with the student directly through our learning management system.
Thanks, Alexa. That's a great idea. Digital journals, I think even adults would probably benefit from that. You know, it's surprising. A lot of the things that we recommend for our students and our kids, you know, end up probably being beneficial for us adults too.
Absolutely.
All right. So we talked a little bit about students who, you know, motivation in general and, you know, maintaining engagement. So specifically talking about students who are virtual now, how do you support students who are virtual, who are in the home environment?
So back to the idea of just being flexible and knowing that every situation is different, and every at-home situation is different. So moving students to a different class time if needed, which I shared previously. If we need to rearrange their time slots, we make that happen, because it's not like it's every child. When you really start to look at it, it could potentially be a handful. But just making ourselves open enough to say, how can I shift his or her schedule around so that they're more productive. Flexible submission times and the flexible mediums for submitting. So whether it's a text message or an email, a photo of a work completed. If they ask for an extension within reason, if you also want to make sure that we're holding them accountable. I know that's something that came up. We want to make them responsible and accountable, so we'll say, okay, you'll get an additional day, but I need it by this time. We also offer ways to engage asynchronously. So if a student is at home and there are lots of distractions, we've provided headphones. We also talked with parents, which we would have thought potentially that this was something that would have been obvious, but it really wasn't, in finding a place where no one's walking behind the student. So if there's like a corner in the home or a wall where the child could work with his or her back to the wall so that no one's walking in the background, finding a time when it's quiet, allowing the child, so that they could work quietly and focus on their class, especially when it's asynchronous and they need to complete any work. So that also supports the idea of the space. So one of the things we talked with parents was about creating schedules. We provided schedule examples to families and said these are times that make sense, and based on the assignments that we've uploaded into our learning management system, this is how long it should take your child. If you're noticing your child is online from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., they're not doing schoolwork the entire time. They're most likely on Roblox. So just check on them, because this is how long it should take them, so that we're all on the same page. And a lot of parents are like, I love having the estimated time, because now I know how to hold my child accountable. They'll say, the teacher said this should only take you 20 minutes. Why has it been an hour? We also wanted the students to get excited about their learning space. So where it made sense, parents came to the school and picked up chart paper so that the child could decorate his or her own background. And some kids kind of like that. Other kids that have like bunk beds, they decorated their bunk beds and created their own backgrounds.
I love that. We had a great question from somebody on how to help support sort of parents and children, maybe when the parent is feeling a little overwhelmed. How do you avoid sort of that feeling of putting another thing onto the parents if they're already feeling stressed up?
So it goes really back to the communication and the relationships that we have established with our families. So when situations where parents do feel overwhelmed because they've lost their jobs, we say, okay, so how can we best help? So what we've noticed is the teacher making a phone call in the morning to the child, because the parent has said if he hears your voice, he'll get on he'll log into the class. So the teacher will call in the morning and say, I need you in class today, and the child shows up. So that the mom wouldn't have the pressure of having to argue with her son about getting online. The rewards for the scholar. So when we know that the parents are stressed, where it makes sense, because like we're noticing in grades 3 to 5, we have more direct contact with the child. The child is a lot more independent. So at that level, there's a lot of teacher and student conversations. Like I need, I'll help you. I'll stay after our Zoom meeting and I'll guide you through this lesson. The teachers also make lots of videos for students so that they can be independent, showing them how to submit, how to log on, how to access. In the lower grades, that's where we see more of the parental support needed for those that are at home. And when there have been situations that the parent is saying, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I'm in the middle of moving, or I'm in a serious situation and I can't deal this week. We have made accommodations where like, can he or she at least read? And you take a picture of them reading. Come pick up the books at school. We just need them to read. And because we've shown the parents that we have their best interest and the student's interest at heart, they don't prolong that period. They just say, I just needed 3 or 4 days. Thank you for that. And they've made up the work. So, and we've facilitated that with hard copies as well. So we'll have the hard copies available. We'll have the online version available. We have the text messaging system available. So in whatever way we could make things easier for families, we do. But we still push the idea of we need them learning and we need them in school, and we want to push rigor and accountability. But we always think about empathy and saying, right now, what's most important, we need to make sure that mom or dad can get their head back in the game so they can just get themselves together, and then we bring them back into the community without them feeling like they failed in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone asked in the chat, and it's actually what we're going to talk about next, but how can principals and administrators best support teachers during this time?
Yeah, that's also an awesome question. And one of the things that I do is I have regular check-ins with my teachers. I do a survey. Sorry. It's real simple, though. I check on how they're doing and if there's anything I can help. And I do ask the COVID question, like, for their family members, like, is anyone close to you, a friend or a family member tested positive? Because that may be impacting them as well. They may be negative, or their spouse may be negative, but maybe their sister or someone else. And just knowing where their mind is and their heart is really important to me, because then it allows me to check on them. I will create flexible schedules when needed for them. If they have to accompany a parent to get a vaccine shot, and then say, okay, let's plan in advance, and how can we cover that class for you so that you could do that with your parent, because I know that that's important to you. We also normalized school technology, and what that simply means is that we made sure we were all using the same apps. So based on teacher feedback, what are the apps that we're finding most useful and that are easier for students to utilize and are giving us the most bang for our buck, because we're able to get more data from it. And as a school, we made decisions, and we said these are the only apps that we're using so that we didn't become overwhelmed. Because what we noticed in the spring, there were so many trials and so many offers, and teachers were inundated with every software, every program, every app you could think of, and it just became overwhelming. Long staff meetings, I'm anti that. I record myself, and I also keep it short. So I usually I always do. My staff meetings are asynchronous. I record myself. I keep it simple. I also filter the information that gets to my teachers. Things that they don't need to worry about, I don't bring to them. They're doing their best to manage in-person and virtual and their own lives. And in some cases, they have children in the household. I know myself, I have 3 children, 3 different ages. So whenever I'm remote, I'm not just relaxing, laying back on a remote class. I am trying to manage my 3 kids. I'm trying to manage what's going on online. So we're all in this together. So wherever I could create the least amount of stress for my teachers, I do. And after I record any staff meetings, I then send out a very short survey just for accountability purposes so that we know you did listen to the staff meeting, and if you have any questions, here's your opportunity for that.
Great ideas. Thank you, Alexa. I love the normalizing school technology because there are so many things, so many different tools out there. So last but not least, wanted to put it out there, how does play and active play help with your students' engagement? You participated in something this fall, you mentioned, called the Fall Fitness Challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this fall we participated in a 3-week fitness challenge. It was a national challenge. And you could see there at the first row, right in the middle, that's Coach G. He's holding up a splat. And that is one of our ways that we embed STEM into PE. So those are our remote scholars, and they were able to also participate in the fall challenge. Even though they were remote, they were able to participate. And it was, I said, a 3-week national challenge, and it was in person and virtual. So there you just have a visual of our virtual scholars. And then after our participation, we ended up with a really cool reward, which was our gold splat.
This was purely put in for bragging rights because
Yes.
Concourse Village Elementary School blew it out of the water. They had the most both virtual and physical stumps, I believe. So their students were moving all month.
Yes, we're very competitive here. So one of the things is, a healthy competition, but we always tell our scholars that they're like the best. They're the most amazing scholars ever. And if we're going to do anything, we're going to do it well. So once they learned that there was a competition, we were ready for it. And when they received that gold splat, they were just over the moon.
Oh, I love seeing the pictures of their excited faces with the splat too. So pre-COVID, we actually went to your school, Alexa, and we met with Coach G and saw his work with your scholars. So I'm just going to show a quick video now. This is pre-COVID about how you were incorporating STEM into PE, which is, I think, really, really unique, and we'll talk a little bit more about that after the video.
Three, 2, 1, go! My name is Thomas Ralamo. I'm a PE teacher at PS 359 in the Bronx. At first, I just started doing the built-in programs that Splat has to offer. As it went on, I feel like I got more confident with it, so I incorporated football today. We did relay race. They threw the ball, they caught it, and it was very cool to see how football and other sports can be combined with splats. Coding, I've never done it in my life. I will have to say at first I was very nervous. The app is very user-friendly. I would say from week 1 to week 8, I feel like I'm a Splats Pro now almost.
Coach G's gonna make the purple pop up a lot quicker this time. So that means we have to be ready to step a little faster. Are we ready to step a little faster this time? Yeah! All right.
They love the noises that it makes.
Hello?
They love the lights that pop up. And they love that it's almost like when they hear that noise, whether it be bad or good, they get instant either gratification or, oh, something happened that went wrong. Splats really creates an inclusive classroom, which is awesome to see. At the end of the day, you want that in your classroom. You want everyone to be included. We're always trying to bring cross-curriculum into the classroom. This would bring all of those together because coding, it makes them think about science, mathematics, all of that. It just goes hand in hand. It's going to make teaching a lot easier. It's definitely going to change the future of PE, most definitely.
All right, so I think some of that audio might have been missed in the first part, but I'll be sure to share the video with the recording of this presentation separately, so you can watch it later too if you missed any of that part. So Alexa, why was it important to you to combine STEM and PE specifically?
So it's always been really important to have cross-curricular connections. And one of the things that we were noticing is that, well, a lot of research says if you have physical movement, you're able to see an increase in retention and understanding. So thinking about combining coding into the physical education structure and then seeing how our students are able to retain that and have more ownership of the information was a smart decision for us.
And have you seen that make a big impact at the school, and especially with Coach G being the PE teacher, maybe not having the experience with that before? How has that gone so far?
Going well, because he started his discussion with pre-K scholars. So he started with pre-K scholars, so we're exposing them at a very young age to coding. And one of the things that we knew that coding was really important to bring it into our community, because that's a career that's going to matter in the future. So ensuring that our scholars are exposed to that as early as possible was of primary importance to us. And he initially was reluctant because he didn't have experience with coding. And he was just like, I don't see how this is going to be possible. And now he's totally becoming like an expert in coding. And then he's so impressed by kindergartners coding different games and whenever they find a bug and how they go back and fix it. And so it's been really nice to watch. And then he's also part of a department team. The art teacher, the music teacher, the PE teacher, and our coding teacher, they work together on department specialties, and they find ways to bring their learning together so that the students are receiving like a well-rounded education, so that and nothing feels like it's isolated. We want students to consistently make connections throughout the day.
I love that. Yeah, cross-curricular is so important. And I just love this photo. It's probably my favorite photo. If I'm having a bad day, I look at this photo because they're having so much fun. It's awesome. All right, so I will put this question as well for everybody who's still with us. How do you use play to increase engagement, or are you using any other techniques to increase engagement that you think would work for everybody else? So please share with us in the chat. What are you all doing to increase engagement at your school, whether you be virtual or hybrid or in person right now? All right, and while folks start sharing with us in the chat, I'll share our next slide, which is really just talking about the opportunity for STEM and play and how important it is. These are a couple stats that we'd like to share. So active play has actually dropped by 50%. In the last 40 years. There's, play has been deprioritized, and STEM has been more prioritized, which is great. But when we, think about STEM, oftentimes we think about a student sitting behind their desk, looking at a screen, and it's very sedentary and very individual. And so, STEM careers and occupations are growing, and so that's very important to keep in mind. But we want to also think about how we can increase physical activity with students. And then this is also another stat I like to share of 90% of parents want their children to learn computer science at school. So computer science being a small part of the big umbrella of STEM, but an important one to introduce students to very early on. And Alexa talked about even their pre-K students, getting that exposure, even if they're not doing the physical coding in the app, they're seeing it, and they're seeing that immediate reaction of what's happening on the code and then what's happening on the screen or on the splat. So we've made mention of splats. I just wanted to give some quick background context. So this is what they look like. You've got the physical floor buttons, we'll call them right now. They light up and they make sounds, and they're built to be stomped on. So students are using a coding app and block-based coding on an iPad or Chromebook. to create the rules really for their own games. So things like relay races and whack-a-mole and obstacle courses. We had one of our schools create a secret agent training course where the PE teacher collaborated with the library media specialist. And so the students are really having a lot of fun, and a lot of times they won't even realize that they're doing coding because they're having so much fun playing the games that they actually created. So it also creates that ownership piece. Anything to add, Alexa, on how your school is using Splats right now for combining STEM and play?
No, just the same way, just thinking about, and then because we still have PE in the gymnasium for our in-person students, we're able to create small cohorts of children that can collaborate, and together they'll code a splat, and we really reinforce that idea of collaborative play. And that was really important to us because just coming into the school with the masks, you know, when we all were quarantined back in March and school fully transitioned to remote, the first time students were re-entering was back in September, and they needed to wear the masks, and school felt different. So we wanted to say, how do we keep some of the elements that make school so awesome? So we didn't want to lose the idea of the collaborative play.
I love that. We're getting some great ideas in the chat, too, for increasing engagement. Dean says that he has virtual group support circles, which I love, for students experiencing various challenges. For example, a parent with cancer or COVID-19 death, etc. Great idea. And lots of examples. Kahoot is a popular one, which you mentioned, Alexa, Nearpod, Pear Deck, which I actually did randomly at a baby shower. She was a teacher, so we played Pear Deck, which was really fun. It was my first time. Fantastic. So we're just wrapping up, but before we leave, I wanted to talk about Stomp Madness, which is an event that we are hosting in March, inspired by March Madness, where every stomp on a physical or virtual splat will count towards 1 penny donated to a charity called Kaboom, which their mission is place-based equity. So they build playgrounds in communities that are under-resourced, and it's a really great organization. So we'll be partnering with them on this. And since you are the reigning champions, Alexa, of our last challenge, are you planning on participating in Stomp Madness as well?
Yeah, we've already started. We are ready.
Oh, yeah, it started. I guess it started March 1st. Oh, my goodness, I can't believe it's March already. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We do provide a couple of example games which are stomp heavy to give people some inspiration for games that require a lot of stomps. But we're really looking forward to that this month. And it is again, it'll be all across the U.S. and Canada, so it is a national challenge, and we're really excited about it. All right, so wrapping up, here is our information. If you're interested in following us, I believe, Alexa, you are also on Twitter, so feel free to put that in the chat if anyone is interested in following Alexa on Twitter. She always has inspirational quotes and updates. So I love following you, Alexa, on Twitter.
Yes, I love spreading joy.
All right, so we have another minute left before 3 p.m. So if anybody has any questions for myself or for Alexa, we'd love to hear from you in the Q&A section. Please keep the ideas coming in the group chat too for engagement. These are great. I am seeing a small group Wednesdays when it's broken up so that the scholars are more apt to engage with one another, which I love. We talked a lot about breaking things up and doing things in small groups. I think that's a great idea. All right, and Mary just asked, what are the things called that you're using for PE and STEM? And those are called splats. I'll write them. Unruly splats. And you can learn more at unrulysplats.com. Awesome. And I'm seeing a lot of appreciation for all your tips, Alexa, and especially for your empathy, care, and concern for students. It's very, very apparent.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate everyone who joined the call today. Thank you.
Awesome. And we had one question. Are you going to continue all of your efforts with caregiver engagement after the pandemic, all the stuff that you're doing with staff and families? Great question.
Yes, we are going to continue it probably in another, we'll think about it more strategically and more intentionally, like what does help and support look like now that when we arrive to post-pandemic, what does that look like? Because there are a lot of things that we learned from this experience, so the answer is definitely yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Alexa. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I will definitely provide a copy of the presentation as well as a copy of that video that we showed using splats, which are what Alexa was using to mix STEM and play in her PE class and really across the school, because it sounds like Coach G is working with other teachers at the school too to incorporate it. So that's exciting. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Super excited to follow your journey, Alexa. I know things are changing all the time. So thank you for sharing with us today. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks.